Q2 providing hope and compassion.
A new billing support group is already changing the lives of patients with brain injuries.
I know what I have felt, and I've had so much support. What about everyone else?
Plus remembering a pandemic.
We just seem to be in sort of a steady state right now.
3 years after COVID first appeared, we take a look at where cases stand tonight.
And a rock and roll pioneer. I check in with Montana music legend Chan Romero.
The MTN News starts right now.
From Montana's news leader, this is the MTN 10 o'clock news.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Russ Riesinger.
And I'm Andrea. Lutz. Our top story tonight, a rehab center on the far west end of Billings is introducing a new support group, one that helps patients cope with brain injuries and recovery.
Now, it's the first brain injury support group in the Magic City in a few years, and as our David J. found out, it's already having a major impact on the lives of patients.
People recovering from traumatic brain injury go through a lot of challenges here at the Rehabilitation Hospital of Montana. And one of those patients has put together a group that offers support and hope.
Kelsey, you are very amazing, and just so glad that we can partner with you.
The hospital announced a new group during Brain Injury Awareness Month. Kelsey Hansen has spent a lot of time in hospitals after her injury 11 years ago.
2012 is when I fell from my horse, and I endured a skull fracture, multiple brain bleeds, a spinal cord injury.
Therapists at the Rehabilitation Hospital of Montana have helped her with several types of therapy.
Speech, but also physical therapy and occupational therapy. We're really working to both improve patient function as close as we can back to their baseline in the time that we have them here.
When someone deals with an injury like a brain injury, a lot of times their life gets turned upside down. They don't completely understand what's going through. Recovery can be very different for everyone.
Kelsey Hansen has experienced that and knows others recovering from traumatic brain injuries also need more. So she formed the support group in November called Billings Brain Injuries Rewired.
We can rewire, a long time ago we didn't think that that could happen, but it can. And that's always given me hope.
And there is a shortage of support groups for brain injury patients in Montana, and Hansen's group fills a void in Billings.
There's a gentleman that he's a longtime Billings resident. His name is Ian Elliott, and he used to have a support group here, and unfortunately Ian passed away. And so it's super cool to see Kelsey just picking up and taking this away.
A big part of her recovery and rehabilitation has been her daughter and the support group.
This has helped me focus on something, starting a support group. I keep myself busy. I have a beautiful 4-year-old daughter, and she is a busybody, and so I'm pretty busy with that.
In Billings, David J., MTN News.
It's been nearly 3 years since Yellowstone County saw its first case of COVID-19. Well, fast forward to today, and life for the most part has returned to normal.
But that doesn't mean the virus has disappeared. Several areas across Montana just recently reporting high levels of community spread, and the state saw nearly 600 cases just last week. Well, that averages out to about 84 cases a day. But that's a far cry from the peak where we saw 2,000 or 3,000 cases in one day. Tonight, Charlie Kleps takes a look back and forward on where things stand with COVID here in Montana.
It's been 3 years since the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 as a global pandemic. And while the community levels in Yellowstone County are still at medium, few are choosing to get the vaccine. It's been nearly 3 years to the day since the first case of COVID-19 appeared in Yellowstone County, and it's been a roller coaster ride ever since.
We've kind of reached a point of pretty much stability. Our case numbers and hospitalization numbers have been roughly the same for about a year now.
Yellowstone County Health Officer John Felton has been following the virus since it first landed in Billings. And while the community levels are still at medium, the virus no longer dominates headlines like it once did.
Early on, everything that we experienced was new. We had our first case, we had our first hospitalization, we had our first death. We've been through all that now, and we understand the virus better.
That understanding has led to better treatment and prevention measures, and also less fear of the virus. One reason we've seen a massive decrease in vaccinations.
In the previous week, there were only 100 doses of COVID-19 vaccine given in the entire county for the entire week.
We saw 250 to 500 shots a day. 3 years ago, it slowly trickled down to maybe 6 months ago where we're doing a good 100 shots a day. to where we're doing 3 to 5 shots a day now.
Farm 406 owner Kyle Austin says he's not surprised by the sudden decline in vaccinations. Both he and Felton say it makes sense as the virus runs its course.
We've gotten everyone vaccinated that wanted to get vaccinated and chose to get vaccinated, and the rest of us have just moved on and accepted it.
But COVID-19 is still spreading in Montana. Both Fergus and Petroleum counties are currently experiencing high community levels of COVID, and many around the state are seeing cases rise to medium levels. But both Felton and Austin say society has a better grip on what's to come.
I think now that we know more about COVID and it's more acceptable and we just learn to live with it.
I said early on when I was asked, when will the pandemic be over? My response was, really when society decides we're done with it. And I think we're kind of there.
In Billings, Charlie Kleps, MTN News.
On Wall Street, stocks took another nosedive today over fears in the banking sector. The Dow was down more than 700 points this morning before recovering and falling 280 points total. The latest fears are over one of Europe's largest banks, which saw shares fall 24% today after funding concerns and the discovery of material weaknesses in its businesses. Larger U.S. banks like Bank of America and J.P. Morgan have been flooded with billions of dollars in deposits after the sudden collapse of Silicon Valley Bank last week. And today, Senate Republicans, including Montana Senator Steve Daines, criticized the Biden administration for its handling of that collapse.
Wasteful spending has led to the highest inflation rates we've seen in the United States in 40 years. And now these bank bailouts are going to put Montana banks and Montana families on the hook for the mismanagement of a Bay Area bank. Why is it that well-managed and sound Montana banks that didn't fail are going to be on the hook to pay for a mismanaged Bay Area bank that did? The same thing was true with President Biden's bogus student debt transfer, forcing Montanans who maybe didn't go to college to now pay for somebody else's loans.
The Justice Department and the Securities and Exchange Commission have launched investigations into the collapse.
As far as the wintry weather go, here's where the advisories and warnings were at right about 8 o'clock, and this is where we are now. Things are starting to ease up, but there's still some travel concerns up in northeastern Montana, and then also if we start looking down, well, first off, let's talk about this. There's avalanche concerns if you're going to be out in the backcountry this weekend, a little bit closer to West Yellowstone. For areas around Cook City, we're still looking at some winter weather hazards. Now, I grabbed a picture a short time ago from around Cook City. It looks like things are starting to ease up, but still a potential for a couple more inches into the Beartooth, the Absarokas. We're still seeing a little bit of snow showing up on Doppler radar the last few minutes. A bit more around the radar site at Glasgow. Forecast details coming up.
Bison migrating back into Yellowstone National Park are getting a little help this year. Take a look at this. Volunteers with the Buffalo Field Campaign and the Montana Department of Transportation dug out these tunnels for the bison. West Yellowstone received 5 feet of snow this winter, and road plowing created giant berms of snow. Those berms making it difficult for the bison to roam. But now they can use these corridors to travel quickly instead of trudging down the road. The tunnels are even strategically placed to follow the herd's preferred route back into the park.
Saving time and money to build a home is what many are seeking out as Billings continues to face a housing crisis.
And now 3D printed homes could be the answer. It's a follow-up to a story that we brought you last August. Our Haley Monaco has the latest on when Montana will see the first home built by this new technology.
3D printer popularity has taken off in recent years, so much so that homes can now be 3D printed. And a Billings developer is now one step closer to bringing the new technology to Montana in just a few months. If you've ever built a home, you know it typically takes months. Construction isn't quick, but that could soon be a thing of the past.
You'll see a single-family home, a 2,000 square foot home, 40 hours or less depending on the temperature and the conditions.
Billings-based contractor Tim Stark has the state's approval to start building homes with 3D printed walls, and now just needs to pick up the machine itself before the building can begin.
They take about 8 months to make, and then we get the joy of going down to Florida and picking it up and bringing it back home.
Across the country, 3D homes are growing more popular. Icon, the company tasked by NASA with creating homes on the moon and Mars, is using the same 3D technology to build this 100-home subdivision near Austin, Texas. And the concept is spreading.
This is our polar printer.
Stark presented all things 3D printed homes in a Homefront board meeting in Billings Wednesday. Homefront is striving to find creative ways to make housing more affordable for Billings. They recently announced a project to transform man camps from the Bakken oil fields into housing units in the Heights. This is another one of their creative projects. Homes built with 3D technology typically cost about 30% less than a traditional home to build.
We're excited about being able to offer a method that will, increase efficiencies and less waste and, being able to put more units out in the market.
Stark says construction in Billings will begin early this summer, but the Magic City won't be the only place 3D homes will start popping up from Stark.
It won't be limited to just Billings. We'll be over in probably Bozeman and Missoula possibly.
An outside-the-box idea to save time and ultimately money, addressing a growing housing crisis all across the state. In Billings, Haley Monaco, MTN News.
Still to come on the MTN 10 o'clock news on Q2, home on the range. This Longhorn is making an impact on the football field while changing lives off of it. We'll head to Weibo in just a bit.
But coming up next, Hippie Hippie Shake. I'll catch up with this rock and roll legend from Billings right after the break.